I am with someone that I have a great honor to be with today. He's not only a leader, he's also a change maker in our community. And he started his journey at 20 years old. George, thank you so much for being here. I know our audience is eager to hear not only just about your policies, but also as your personal journey. Who is George Anderson behind the titles?
Well, thank you so much, Claudine, for having me. It's a great honor as well to be here and speaking with you. I was born and raised in Nanaimo. My parents moved to Canada from Ghana in the late 80s. Went to elementary school, high school, and university there. And at one point, I was elected a city council at the age of 20 and helped pass a 25-year transportation master plan. And to put that in context for you, I was 20 and the next youngest person was 60 and our mayor was 73. So about 53 years went by before I was born, at least for our mayor. And it was really great being able to uplift the voices of individuals who weren't normally represented in the local government process. Went off to law school in Toronto, participated in a legal clinic in Switzerland, came back and worked on Bay Street, then have been practicing corporate commercial litigation at one of Canada's largest law firms. And then in October of 2024, I was elected as the first MLA for Nanaimo-Lantzville and one of now 4 Black elected officials in British Columbia's history.
That's awesome. What first inspired you to step into public life, and how has your background as a lawyer and a community leader shaped the way you approach leadership?
Well, I can tell you that from a young age, my parents instilled in me that there was a real importance to give back to your community. And whether it was through Salvation Army, which I volunteered for, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, I've always wanted to try to give back. And so that's where I was able to go through the various volunteer organizations and look at doing what I could to help people. Because really, the life that we live in, we're interdependent upon one another, and we all have a responsibility to help one another.
And that's such strong foundation. And I imagine each role along the way taught you something different. Looking back, what lessons from your time as a lawyer, a city council in Nanaimo, and even as a volunteer have you carried into your work as MLA?
Well, this job as a lawyer is people-focused. You have to be looking out for the best interests of individuals. And Tommy Douglas, who was a leader of the NDP, once said that, and I'm paraphrasing, that a measure of a society is how you take care of the most vulnerable. And the work that I do is looking to try to figure out how I can help young people, help seniors who are trying to get care, to ensure that people get from A to B in the most efficient ways. And that's what I did as a city councillor, was trying to create or build a society that was better than how I found it.
And it's clear your journey has been about service and representation, which makes me wonder, why does it matter for young people and diverse voices to actually see themselves reflected in the government?
Well, as a young person who was elected at the age of 20, young people are going to inherit a lot of what society is going to be. And last year I read this book, it's called If Science is to Save Us, and the premise of that book was whether or not we had a duty to be a good ancestor. And that's something that I fundamentally believe, that we ought to leave a world that is better than how we found it for future generations, so that they can enjoy what we did as well. And for all young people, I think that they really need to step up, because if they don't, other people are going to take that space, and those young voices need to be at the center and heart of all decision making.
And when you think about your own leadership, your own example, what kind of leader do you strive to be? And how do you measure success in public service?
Well, for myself, my hope is just that individuals feel like they were listened to. Government is often, in many ways, appears to be inaccessible to people.
Right.
The building that I currently work in was built 100 plus years ago. It has very archaic structures to it that people don't understand. And my hope is to be able to make that more accessible to everyday people, because at the end of the day, the work of all elected representatives is to serve the public.
Right. And leadership is also about vision, especially when it comes to building community or economy that lasts into next century. British Columbia is facing global competition. What is your vision for ensuring that BC not only keeps up but also thrive to the next century?
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate to be able to work alongside Premier David Eby, and the vision that he has for our province is just to make sure that British Columbia is the engine for Canada, is the economic engine for Canada. One of the things that I proposed is a port strategy to really unlock BC's economic potential. The Vancouver Fraser Port Authority is the strongest port in all of Canada. The opportunities that exist in Prince Rupert, the jobs that in port logistics, this is the reason of promoting this kind of strategy, from my mind, is that you can look at creating really good jobs, connectivity. You can look to 2021 where the Coca-Cola cut off trade, and that meant that we weren't being able to trade with the rest of Canada. So looking at short sea shipping, how we invest in rail, and that's what Prime Minister Mark Carney is talking about right now, is these large projects to be able to ensure our economic resilience. $7 billion is part of our marine industry right here in British Columbia. There's a lot of economic opportunities, and I'm hopeful that should we end up moving in that direction one day, that we'll be able to help make British Columbia as economically resilient as possible.
Okay. And speaking on that strategy, how does that help community places like Port Alberta or DuPont to compete globally?
Absolutely. Well, last month, or I guess in August, I was at the Association of Pacific Ports, and Taiwan signed a sister port agreement with the Port of Nanaimo. There is other opportunities with Prince Rupert. They are 4 days closer to Asia, so if we're looking at our climate goals, being able to reduce carbon emissions, again, a lot of opportunity to be able to unleash British Columbia's unleash economic potential for our province, but also ensure that young people have jobs in port logistics or with longshoremen supporting labor to be able to really achieve what we need to as a province, especially as we're facing these unjustified tariffs from Donald Trump.
Right. And speaking of ports are just one piece of the economy, the future also depends on innovation. What role does your life science, clean tech innovation playing in making BC economy more resilient?
Absolutely. Well, I think that life science is more than just a buzzword. People will talk about it that way. It is a jobs plan. It's a way of ensuring that, I can give you an example. We went through the COVID pandemic, and it was UBC that helped develop the mRNA vaccine. Genome BC, led by President Suzanne Gill at Genome BC, $1.3 billion in funding towards 500 projects that are helping ensure that we have that innovation to be able to deal with things like pandemics, to be able to help with health. There's a lot of opportunity, and BC has a buzzing life sciences area, and we should continue to support it.
And while those industries are exciting on the heart of every community as small businesses as well, how can government do a better job to support small businesses to create jobs, especially when it comes to succession and generation change?
Oh, absolutely. Well, with Minister Cowan, he's the Minister of Jobs, Economic Growth, he's going out and talking to small businesses, because they are the backbone of our communities. One of the things that we have not done a great job of in all across the world is succession planning. There are small businesses that are looking to find out how they continue working or how they move their business somewhere else. And I think one of the opportunities there is to actually create, like, whether it's a portal or some type of strategy for young people to be able to say, you know what, here's a business with someone who's in Prince George who wants to retire, and that young person can say, I'm ready to come in and learn how to operate this business. And that also ensures that local communities stay vibrant.
Right. And the economy does not function without a strong connections, how people and good actually move around the province. As a parliamentary secretary for transit, What is your top priority when it comes to improving transit in BC?
Yeah. Well, I get to work with the Minister of Transportation and Transit, Mike Farnworth, and BC is undergoing one of the most significant infrastructure capital planning processes in our history. We're building more SkyTrains. We've made transit free for individuals under 12. We're doing what we need to make life better for everyday British Columbians, and I'm proud to be able to support that type of work. And I'm going to continue to do that in my role as Parliamentary Secretary to ensure that British Columbians are able to move across the province in the most efficient manners. And that's by continuing to see more investments in SkyTrains, more investments in buses. I think we're headed in the right direction.
And how do you see regional and inter-region transit shaping the future of communities like Nanaimo and the Kootenays or the Fraser Valley?
Absolutely. Well, there is a difference between transit in the Lower Mainland versus Castlegar or Nelson. In the Lower Mainland, transit may be used as the main method of transportation, but in the Kootenays, they may be using transportation or transit in a way for social services, to be able to get to a hospital appointment. And that's where we have to use different lenses to recognize the differences between those two communities. And so that's where it's looking at things like end trips. So perhaps a bus gets someone along the main strip, but how do they get home? And that's where our government is doing that work, to be able to work alongside local governments to make sure that, again, people in rural communities are getting the same kind of service.
Which brings us to infrastructure more broadly. Why is investing in things like port and rails, transit, is about more than just moving people and goods? Absolutely.
Well, for a significant period of time, government didn't invest in infrastructure. And in 2017, when the BC NDP came in, started building hospitals, building schools. Right now, we're building the first medical school in Western Canada in over 55 years. That's pretty significant, and that's going to train the next generation of doctors right now in British Columbia. We're building more SkyTrains. We're making sure that we're building up, making sure that people have the type of communities which they can be resilient. Is there more work that needs to be done? Absolutely, but we're doing that work right now, and we're building up British Columbia in a way that makes sure that people can see the vibrancy in their own communities.
Okay, and at the end of the day, all of that will matter only if it strengthens the community and improve people's lives. What role do non-profit and community organizations play in strengthening BC social fabric? And since literacy is something that I'm personally passionate about, how do we break the cycle of struggle that so many families face?
Oh, absolutely. As a longtime volunteer myself with Literacy Central Vancouver Island, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, nonprofits are the silent backbone of our communities. They're the ones that feed family. They're the ones that teach financial literacy. And when we support them, we see support throughout all British Columbia. And we've got to continue to do what we can to make sure that we see that vibrancy within those organizations. People like United Way and others who are going out and helping everyday people to just be able to get by. And so big supporter of our nonprofits and the work that they do to support British Columbians.
And it's not just about organizations, it's also about everyday citizens to feel heard. You have spoken about listening to local voices. How do you make sure communities like Nanaimo, Lansville are heard at the provincial level?
Well, I speak to the people in Nanaimo, Lansville quite regularly, and when I go back to Victoria, I'm there having those representing their viewpoints there. I think it's really important that as elected officials that we remember those stories, because those are the stories that end up making sure that hospital is built. That when I speak to an individual who says, I need to be able to get to work, but I can't afford a car, that we have effective transit. And that's why, again, seeing the type of investments this government has made to ensure that everyone is treated fairly is something that's quite remarkable, and I'm proud to be part of this government.
Okay. And one issue I keep hearing from so many people is about housing. How housing affordability is top of mind for so many families. What solutions do you see both realistic and impactful?
Well, as a young person who went to law school and was told you do everything right and you'll be able to own a house, that is very difficult for many people. Very high home prices, which resulted from a time where people chose not to invest in housing, and our government plans to build 300,000 new homes over the next 10 years. We're looking at transit-oriented development, actually implementing transit-oriented development, even in Victoria at Uptown, an area where people can walk to and from work, they can cycle, they can use transit. These are the kinds of solutions that will help people. And also ensure that businesses thrive. When a restaurant knows that they have foot traffic, they're going to be more successful. And that's the type of British Columbia that we need to be building.
And when we talk about development, the environment also comes into conversation. How do you personally balance economic development with environmental sustainability when making policy decisions?
Absolutely. Well, I don't see that the environment and the economy are two mutually exclusive things. The Clean BC program that the government of British Columbia has, making sure that there's more wind and solar power. Groups like HTEC, the Hydrogen Technology Energy Corporation, which is working to build British Columbia's retail hydrogen station so that you have trucks that are running on hydrogen, cars that are running on hydrogen, because you know what comes out of a hydrogen car tailpipe? Water. So you actually are reducing the impact on the environment. And if we're teaching people how to work on a gas-powered engine, we should also be teaching them how to work on a hydrogen engine. So when that transition happens, they're easily able to go to another job that pays them the same, if not more.
And what does fairness in government means to you, and how does that guide your decisions?
Well, that means having a clear set of rules, rules that people understand and that we've agreed to as a society that that's how it's going to be, and that applies to both businesses and individuals.
And you have been so clear about reconciliation, not just being word, it should be more than just word. How do you see progress on reconciliation happening in a meaningful way?
A great example, a few months ago, I was at the expansion of Nanaimo's port, speaking on behalf of the Minister of Transportation and Transit. And the Nanaimo Port Authority has developed such a great relationship with Nanaimo First Nations. It's important that we have Indigenous communities at the heart of decision making, that they're part of that discussion, because for too long they weren't a part of discussion. It was said, this is what's going to happen, and we can't be in that type of environment anymore. It's about also bringing people along, and reconciliation. This government has done that, has worked alongside Indigenous communities, and my hope is that we continue to ensure that Indigenous voices are part of and at the heart of our decision making.
In politics, it might be so distant and discouraging for so many people. What is the biggest misconception people have about politics, and how do you hope to change that?
Well, it's a difficult time right now in the world. You see the division, you see unfortunate assassinations that are occurring. That's not what political discourse should look like. And some people will look at question period in the legislature and say, this institution doesn't work. But the thing that people don't get to see is the relationships that are occurring in the background, the friendships that are developed, the communication in a very positive tone. Because at the end of the day, even though we all may be elected to different parties or we represent different ridings, our number one responsibility is to our communities and to British Columbia. And so the only way to be able to do that is to work together. And so absolutely, it may appear that there are challenges, but the way that we've got to universal healthcare was by working together. The way that we've been able to deal with transit has been by working together. There's still much more work to do, and I some people would say that the glass is half empty. I'm more of the glass is half full. And if the glass is half full or half empty, the glass is refillable. And so that's where I'm hopeful that I can use the skills that I've had in my time as a volunteer, a lawyer, as a city councilor, to be able to be that bridge to bring people together, because that's what we need to do, is really work together to find solutions for our community and just to create a better world.
What motivates you personally to keep pushing even on the toughest days?
I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't grow up from a household of privilege. My parents worked really, really hard to give my siblings and I endless opportunities. And when I think about the work that I'm doing in the legislature, it's a great privilege to be able to do so. Not many people get to have this type of job, and I choose to work very hard every single day to make sure that people have the same type of opportunities that I've had. And for me, if I can move the dial an inch forward so that other people can go about living their lives in a happier way, feel that they were heard and listened to by government, that it was accessible to them, I'll feel like I've accomplished my job.
If British Columbians remember one thing about you, your work, and you a decade from now, what would that be?
Well, if there was something that I'd hope that British Columbians would remember about me, is that I fought for them, and I fought to try to create a kinder and gentler society, one in where people felt like they had endless opportunity, and that government was accessible to them. Essentially, just that I was an individual that cared for our province.
Thank you so much for sharing not just only your vision, but also your heart behind the work you do. And conversation like this remind us that politics is not only about policies, it's also about people, fairness, and the future we want to build together. So I really appreciate your time and commitment to be here, and looking forward to have more conversations like this for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you. And thank you to our audience as well. If this conversation has inspired you, please share it with a friend, a community members, so that we can keep thriving and healing together when we build a strong community. Thank you.